The technology always moves faster than the regulations. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at. Hello, I'm Peter Asmus, Director of Strategic Marketing with AutoGrid. And today we have Avery McAvoy from RMI, and we're going to talk about virtual power plants.
Great. Well, thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. I'm Avery McAvoy. I'm a senior associate on the carbon-free electricity team at RMI. I think a lot of folks are looking to regulation and policy as like a change lever because there's such a huge potential for impact. If you change the policies and regulations around it, like people have to do it, right? So if we can influence that, then wonderful. So what we're working on in the regulatory and policy working group is putting together a set of foundational policy principles, not positions or lengthy papers necessarily, which it's easy to do once you get into the weeds of policy. We're trying to really boil it down to what are the fundamental principles that enable virtual power plants, even down to just, customers own their data, right? So very foundational kind of 10001 of what VPPs need. DER deployment. You need the assets out there in the first place in order to aggregate them into a virtual power plant. So you need a robust policy structure for getting those assets out there to all customers, not just perhaps single family homeowners that can actually afford it. You need to get it out to everyone, including energies that face higher energy burden, which is, the percentage of their income each year that goes towards their energy bills. They have the most to benefit from virtual power plants if they can, provide these on-bill savings because it's such a huge portion of how much they use their income for. So deploying those assets out there for all customers is number one. I'd say number two is valuation and fair compensation. That gets towards like the barriers that I was talking about. And I know this is an AutoGrid's paper as well. VPPs need to be adequately and accurately valued and compensated for the full suite of benefits and grid services that they provide. So this could be, having that through dynamic or time varying rates, through tax credits, through upfront or ongoing subsidies. VPPs need those structures in order to be valued and compensated for that so they can compete with the traditional generators, which have had decades of rigorous, rate making that is inclusive of their benefits. And then the third and final one that I would highlight is inclusive grid service and program development requirements. So kind of in a similar vein of different program requirements or operational characteristics have been developed based on traditional generators in the past, but that's changing with these technologies that are becoming increasingly more deployed into people's homes and businesses. So they should be defined to meet, they being grid services, should be defined to meet the energy system's needs today and into the future, and not just the needs of the past. So it needs to be inclusive of all these other wonderful benefits that distributed energy resources and virtual power plants can provide, as well as allowing value stacking is what we call it. It's basically where you can be compensated for multiple different types of values and participate in multiple different programs or markets, while obviously, not double counting, but allowing that multiple participation so they can benefit the grid and customers as much as possible. Something I want to highlight that you touched on earlier is the jurisdictional element of all of this. I think that's the number one thing that I've been trying to wrap my head around for the last year. Is it differs by state, it differs by power market, it differs if there's a wholesale market there or not. So there's a lot of jurisdictional differences for what VPPs may look like, how they may be structured or compensated. But something that VP3 is trying to work on through leveraging the expertise of all of our members who are the ones on the ground delivering virtual power plants every day is how can we go towards a more standardized, agnostic structures and frameworks that can be, maybe 80% of it is reused and then the final 20% is customized to your jurisdiction. So we're trying to do that through the foundational policy principles. We're trying to characterize the different business models through our VPP utility flipbook of different programs, utility programs around the country, trying to do that through our data communications and interoperability landscape assessment, what type of communications protocols are being used across markets. if you have all these devices, you need them to be able to talk to each other. I think one example I'll put out there is we were writing a decarbonization paper I mentioned at the start, and we were going through the customer journey of, customer updates to an induction stove, a customer adds a smart thermostat, a customer adds a heat pump, all these different things. And then when they tried to put them all together, none of them could talk to each other. And so they, were on their way to electrifying their home, but in terms of actually having them speak to each other, and hopefully they had a virtual power plant program that they could be enrolled into in their area. In the very end, that was our managing director. Even he, who is an extreme energy wonk, right, had the limitation because his devices couldn't talk to each other. So we're trying to address some of those barriers through, opening things up and standardization.